You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. GHD2 Northport and W265CG Tuscaloosa. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. A Town Square Media station. This is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
It is 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. It is time once again for Southern Fried Sports right here on your home for University of Alabama Athletics, Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, your trusty, if not talented host of the program, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Titletown, USA, also known as Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Some really cool stuff they're doing there at Peterbrook in advance of Father's Day in a couple of Sundays. They're doing the children's handprints in chocolate. And what you get is a solid chocolate edible frame. And then you get the child's handprint within the frame. Awesome. Tugs at the old heartstrings, and even better, Pops can just consume the whole thing. Entirely edible. The children's chocolate handprints for Father's Day right there at Peterbrook Chocolatier. Joined on the program by the executive producer of Southern Fried Sports, Jacob Harrison. And together, we combine to form the 60-bit of Sports Talk Radio. Jacob, how you doing on this hump day?
Doing all right.
And that sounds good enough for a Wednesday, right? I mean, that's about the best you can hope for. Still got a couple of days until the weekend. I tried to make it as much like the weekend last night as I possibly could. Took in the first minor league baseball game in a couple of years. Went by, scooped up Pops, spending some time in Florida these days. So able to go by, scoop up Pops. I actually offered to Pops. I said, look, let's go play 9 holes at 4 o'clock. And then at 7, we'll go to the Jumbo Shrimp game, the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. Now, it used to be a AA town for the most part, way, way, way back once upon a time. I believe Jacksonville was a AAA town for the New York Mets at the time. Tom Seaver, some of the greats in Mets history, went through Northeast Florida. I offered him the duo, the 1-2 punch, 9 holes, just 9 holes at 4 o'clock. And then AAA baseball at 7 o'clock. I got the response. And see, I have to go through Nana with all this because Pops doesn't text. So I have to, she's the intermediary. I have to go through her to schedule him. And back comes the response, one or the other. He wasn't going to do both. Said he didn't have the energy these days for golf and a baseball game on top of it. So he settled for the AAA game. I knew he would. He'd rather go to the ballpark, even if it wasn't a thirsty Thursday last night. We know Pops loves those thirsty Thursdays. He'll probably be back tomorrow night for Thirsty Thursday at the baseball grounds of Jacksonville. We go down there. It's nice because you can go online, you can pick your seats, you just walk in, they scan your phone. All of this is happening, and Pops is just in utter disbelief at how logistically we're going into the ballpark, how it's so easy due to technology, even though he continues to fight against it tooth and nail. Just will not come on board where technology is concerned. So we get in the ballpark. We're about 30 minutes early before first pitch. We got time to get a dog, hit the concession. So that's what we do. We both get the standard ballpark dog. And if there was a silver lining from minor league baseball being canceled last year, it's that you feel more of a sense of confidence that the concession items, aren't left over from, say, the 2020 playoffs from last September, maybe in minor league baseball. You got to think, because there was no minor league baseball last year, that all that popcorn, all those hot dogs, all that stuff that you kind of worry about sometimes, right? When you go to the minor league ballpark, you're wondering, I wonder if this hot dog, has already had a birthday and I don't really know it. So you feel a little better about that. Standard concession stand dog. We hit it with the mustard and the packaged relish, and it was fine. We both got a bag of the roasted salted peanuts, and so we eat our dogs. Game starts. I look over at Pops in about the fourth inning, and these bags of roasted peanuts, I mean, they're pretty good sized. I think you can share them. They're big enough. I look over there about the fifth inning. Pops has demolished the entire bag. He loves those roasted peanuts. So they're gone. He's done. He's done with the concessions. But we saw the jumbo shrimp. Look, and the ballpark's nice enough. It's not Regions Field in Birmingham. Regions Field in Birmingham, a very, very nice ballpark. A little newer than the ballpark in Jacksonville. So in terms of ballpark comparisons, Regions Field a good bit nicer in my opinion. But, man, people love that jumbo shrimp gear and that jumbo shrimp merchandise. They got a little pro shop or gift shop there, team shop, they call it, right, at the ballpark. And it was just loaded up. And last night, by the way, at the ballpark, the baseball grounds of Jacksonville was the first night that they'd had full capacity for the crowd. So you had a pretty big crowd for a Tuesday night. But, man, that team shop, people just can't. It was a stroke of genius. I remember when the jumbo shrimp name came out and people were like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. People can't get enough of the gear. I can promise you there's just as much presence for jumbo shrimp paraphernalia and gear in Northeast Florida these days, at least before the draft there was. Now, with the Jaguars getting Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer coming in, I think there's probably been an influx, a sort of revamp of Jag gear. But before that, you might have actually seen more jumbo shrimp stuff around Northeast Florida. But that team shop was loaded. I mean, they couldn't keep the stuff on the shelves. And so we saw a couple of things last night at the ball game. We saw in the top of the second inning, the Norfolk Tides skipper gets ejected in the top of the second, which led me to believe with that particular umpire, Gary Kendall, the manager for the Norfolk Tides, had a previous issue, probably in the not too distant past, like maybe over last weekend or in the previous just few days. Because top of the second, he gets run, which is awesome. You just want to see stuff like that when you go to the minor league baseball game. Now, Pops, he actually roots for the jumbo shrimp. I don't care. It's minor league baseball. I'm not a Marlins fan to begin with. So I just want to see things like that. That was a bonus. And then on the drive home, I saw my first motorcycle accident that I've ever seen. And thankfully the guy was fine because Pops and I were right behind this guy. It looked like a brand new Harley too. I mean, this thing's probably 40 grand or so. I don't know how much Harleys cost, but this was a nice one. And I knew it was nice because I was in the lane that I was supposed to be in to access a ramp up onto the interstate. And this guy comes through the right side, the middle lane, flying through downtown on this Harley. And he's trying to beat everybody up to get into that lane to get up onto the interstate himself. And I'm guessing he was fairly new at the whole motorcycle deal. No helmet. This guy's got on shorts and a T-shirt, flying, no helmet. And he ends up in front of us well ahead of us, actually. So he didn't need to really be speeding when he went to hit the curve on the ramp. But, man, he laid that baby down. Laid it down, sparks everywhere. He slides a good bit. We pull up next to him. I say, hey, you okay? He says, yeah, I'm good. We go up, do a U-turn. When we come back around, he's thinking he's just going to make a few minor adjustments to this Harley by hand and be able to just ride off like nothing happened. He's trying to play off a motorcycle accident. That's kind of hard to do when you lay it down in shorts and no helmet and a T-shirt. And so when we come back by, now he's stalled. You know, he's coming to that reality that he probably just did $5,000 plus in damage to a brand new Harley. And I can see where he laid it down on that left side, his forearm and his elbow, even though it's dark, I can see, man, the road rash. So he's had better Wednesdays, I'm thinking. But it was example number 1,278 why yours truly won't be on a Harley anytime soon. Okay? I used to think I wanted a Harley. I used to be in that camp. And then I spent 71 days in a rehab hospital as a result of a car accident. And I met some individuals during that extended stretch in said rehab hospital who were lucky they made it to the rehab hospital as a result of motorcycle injuries. Met a homicide detective. Both knees replaced after a motorcycle accident. I was good on that after those introductions and meeting those folks. 205-342-9904. That is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. So there you go. I'd say my Tuesday was pretty eventful compared to most, right? Time of year that it is. You don't think a whole lot's going on, but enjoyed the minor league baseball. I'll be back. Speaking of baseball, and really, we touched on this yesterday on the program. You see this morning that Alabama football now has added another home and away, this one with Boston College, set for the 2030s. Now, I've said it before, with some of these future series, they're so far out, you know, and they're a little bit depressing in a way. As you get older, you get into your 50s, you see these series announced for 12, 13 years from now. And initially you're thinking, oh, that'll be cool. And then the second thought that hits you is that, am I going to be room temp when Alabama goes to BC in 10, 12 years? I know it's morbid, but it's called mortality. You know, you start having those thoughts. But Alabama, Boston College, Alabama, scheduling the Catholic schools pretty good here. Going to have BC now to join Notre Dame, kind of back to back there with Notre Dame and BC. And what you're going to have too is the potential for some really good in that stretch with Notre Dame and then into BC. You're going to have the opportunity for some really good baseball football combo weekends, right? We talked about Notre Dame in 2029 in relation to going into Chicago, checking out Cubs games, maybe get there Thursday, go to the Thursday game, maybe the Friday game too. Saturday, you're at Notre Dame Stadium for Alabama, Notre Dame. Well, how about BC? That game is scheduled for September the 13th in 2031. Yeah, you get up to Boston. The Red Sox are in town. You might even be able to tie that in because of how the NFL schedules work. And they start, usually the NFL does, the week after Labor Day. They start the week after week one of college football. You might be able to tie in the Pats for that BC trip. You might be able to go Red Sox, Alabama, BC, and then Mac Jones in 2031. How about that potential there up in New England for you when Alabama makes that trip? And again, as we know, these series, the scheduling, it's all subject to change. We've already seen Notre Dame moved. So it's written in pencil when you start putting them this far out, but it's fun to think about. 205-342-9904. What about the Florida State softball team? I had that one, Florida State, Oklahoma, game one of the Women's College World Series Championship Series last night. I had that one on the telephone, on the iPhone. We were watching it at the minor league game, And boy, Florida State just keeps doing it. 8-4 winners last night over Oklahoma. And we have Corey on hold, and I'm going to ask him this question. And I'd be interested in the response from Alabama fans, seeing as how Florida State double dipped the Crimson Tide on Sunday and Monday. Who are you pulling for? Are you bitter about that Florida State 1-2 that you suffered there at the hands of the Seminoles enough that you'll root for Patty Gasso and Oklahoma? I'm not. I'm pulling for Florida State in these finals. Yeah. So 1 win away. Florida State on the verge of winning a second national title in the last 3 that have been contested, because you didn't have one last year. Florida State won it in 2018 and could do it again with 1 more win. Let's talk to Corey right now on the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Corey, how you doing?
Good morning, Travis. How you doing this morning?
Doing good. You doing okay? You recovering okay, Corey?
I'm doing great. And, at first last night I didn't care who won. But really, if you think about it, the way Florida State won last night, if Florida State can win tonight, especially if they play really well and dominate again, it'll tell me that Alabama just ran into a really hot team at the wrong time, and that even Oklahoma couldn't stop them. I mean, pretty much from the beginning of the year, well, in the preseason, people picked UCLA and Oklahoma to be in the championship game, and more likely UCLA to win the championship because they had Rachel Garcia and Bubba Nichols. And then once Oklahoma's offense started rolling and you saw the stats, people thought, okay, Oklahoma's going to win the title because they had all their players and the stats, and it's in their backyard. And once the bracket came out, everybody saw, okay, Oklahoma, UCLA for the championship, and Oklahoma's probably going to win because their stats. And then James Madison upset them in the first game, and then people thought, okay, Oklahoma still can get there, but then they did. And Florida State just came hot at the right time, and I know we lost to them, but I think, like I said, if Florida State beats them tonight, I think it just proves that they just ran out Alabama.
Yeah, I think, Corey, I think if you're an Alabama fan and that is the way it plays out, you can take some solace in that, because Florida State looking more and more like a team of destiny, and it once again underscores the point that you can play great all year, or you can play great for 2 months solid, but you can also run into a team that finds it in a 2-week period, really. Like Florida State has done, and going through the Baton Rouge Super to take out LSU, which I thought was a favorable draw for Florida State. I wasn't really sold on LSU as a top 8 national seed, but they have certainly validated their presence there in Oklahoma City, and you almost feel like they're in a not so great spot tonight because they're not up against elimination, but they weren't last night either, and they looked very, very good. So yeah, it could be that Florida State's just that team, and for Alabama, unfortunately, they ran into it.
Would you agree that they have to win it tonight? Because if they push to game 3, it favors Oklahoma tomorrow.
I would, except that we know Florida State's 8-0 in their last 8 elimination games in Oklahoma City. So, I would typically agree with that assumption. And it would make all the sense in the world, especially with Patty Gasso taking these extended team conferences in the middle of innings. So the rest of the dugout can go out and lead, 5,000 Oklahoma fans and cheers. But Florida State just seems like a team that's wired in a way that they don't either notice that or it fuels them to get the job done. There's a lot of competitive athletes, a lot of teams, they love those situations. They thrive on it. Florida State seems like they might be one of them.
Let me ask you this, switching subjects for just a second. Do you feel good about Alabama repeating this year? And I say that because if there's one, I'm not saying Alabama's going to do this necessarily, but complacency is always the one thing that can ruin a team from the inside out. And we have the talent to repeat. It's just complacency is going to be the toughest thing. And we have the schedule. We have the talent. It's just complacency is going to be the biggest thing to avoid. And that's a nature thing. I mean, it's hard to avoid complacency when you've already won a championship the year prior. And I'm just asking you, do you feel good about our chances of repeating, or do you think there's something blocking our path from repeating, whether it's a team or a position or
we're talking football now, right?
Yes.
Look, a lot of it's going to be contingent upon how they transition to some key spots, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball. Is Bryce Young ready for prime time? I tend to believe that he is. Will they be able to get the sort of leadership they need on that side of the ball after so much of their team leadership in general? They had 4 permanent team captains come from the offensive side of the ball last year. So, Bryce Young's going to have to step it up intangibly too. Even though he's a second-year player, he's going to be asked to take on more of that than we've typically seen from maybe some quarterbacks at Alabama in recent years. And that's where having guys, though, like Chris Owens, Brian Robinson over there, that should be extremely beneficial. And Kendall Randolph as well, whether or not Kendall Randolph's a starter at offensive tackle, is a hybrid, whatever his level of participation is in terms of playing time, he still can be that kind of guy as well. I think Evan Neal can give him that going into his third year. Mechie's going to need to be more of that. Slade Bolden can provide that at the wide receiver position. So, no, they've got the people. And, I think I saw a tweet here in the last day or so from either Dr. Matt Ray or David Ballou just crowing about how much they loved the makeup of this team so far in their early stages of maybe summer workouts. And it was noted within the tweet, can they sustain it? But early indications are, as much as that team a year ago was superior in the ways of intangibles and leadership and all those things, early indications are that they like what they've got in that regard this time around. Hey, Corey, we always appreciate the call.
Good talking to you, Travis. Roll Tide.
There he goes. Corey checking in with us on a Wednesday. Let's head to the first break of the program. We come back. Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com. He'll join us on Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
Touchdown! Alabama wins! The Alabama football countdown clock is driven by Crawford Insurance, Tuscaloosa's low-cost auto insurer. Call 752-6489 for a free quote today.
Roll Tide! Roll Tide!
There are 87 days until Alabama football.
Dominate!
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Cloudy at times with scattered to numerous showers and thunderstorms this afternoon and tonight. The high today 86, the low tonight 70. Tomorrow partially sunny, warm and humid. Scattered showers and storms developing again. The high at 87. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 84 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be
Shattered. Love and hope and sexy dreams are still surviving on the streets. Look at me. I'm tattered. I'm shattered. Friends are so alarming.
On this
My love
day
is
in
never
1978,
the party on the street.
the Rolling Stones released Some Girls. I remember that one around Casa de Ryer as, I guess, a 10-year-old. Because we had the old reel-to-reel setup. I know, I'm dating myself significantly here, but reel-to-reel back in the day meant that you were very, very serious about your music. And we had this one reel-to-reel. Shadow Babe. I bet Cecil Hurt knows what I'm talking about when it comes to the reel-to-reel era. How about it, Cecil?
Yeah, that was the jazz people and the classical people all had their reel-to-reel set up.
I'm not sure why my folks had one, but they had it, and we had Stones, we had Bob Seger back in the late 70s.
Where were y'all getting reel-to-reel tapes like that unless you were...
I don't know.
Unless Pops was taping them off the FM.
I don't know. I can't tell you, but I remember it. And
you couldn't just walk into the record store and buy a big reel-to-reel.
We had the turntable too. Now, I mean, that was more of the standard. I don't think we had, a sort of complete catalog of reel-to-reel, but we had some reel-to-reels. I don't know where they came from. I can't tell you. There's no telling as bootleg as the folks were back in the day. So I can't.
Maybe he was just mailing off to get.
There's no telling, Cecil.
Yeah.
Hey,
a lot of the reel was live jazz or live classical.
Yeah.
People
yeah. What was the company that made those reels? It's like a Akia or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the name.
Yeah.
Was the brand? I mean, they were serious about it.
The big ones, yeah.
Yeah, these were big. They absolutely were.
Yeah, but you don't get any of the album pops or buffets or whatever. They were serious. Couldn't take that.
We also had one of those awful custom vans, that had the shag carpet in it and the couch that would turn into a dining room table in the back.
We had one
of those.
Don't tell me Pops had a reel-to-reel in there.
No, he wasn't Jack Horner in Boogie Nights. No, that wasn't Pops in the late 70s. But I could put a 1978 playlist of just that year on and probably be okay for a few weeks just listening to 1978, Cecil.
Sure, absolutely.
It's kind of all happening, wasn't it, in 78? Everything was coming together.
Everything hadn't split apart the way that it has now.
You had punk still. You had rap coming into play. You had the rock and roll. I guess you were coming out of Zeppelin and some of that.
Yeah, some of it, but you had some new wave. You had some old wave. You had that album, Some Girls, which was huge, obviously. But kind of think of 78.
Had some Seger.
Werewolves of London, definitely. Werewolves of London. Excitable Boy was definitely 78.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of new wave. Elvis Costello,
Blondie,
Talking Heads, Blondie, Patti Smith Group. However you wanted to lump all that. But yeah, you could play some tunes from that era and be well said, I think. So
maybe even that was about Sugar Hill Gang, wasn't it? Rapper's Delight was about
just about coming.
Right there on the edge.
Yeah, some of these are going to be 77, some of these are going to be 79, but you were just on the verge of getting some of that. But the older bands were still putting out product too. But yeah, Blondie definitely would have been kind of think 78 would have been after Born to Run, so that would have been Darkness at the Edge of Town for Springsteen.
Mm-hmm.
Right in there again. Somebody calls up and says that was November 70. So I get that. But yeah, there was a lot going on in those years, and things were transitioning, and there was about to be some new stuff coming on the horizon. But some girls kind of had all of it. It had some rock and some gold covers. Just my imagination was on there. But Some Girls was the biggest album I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the nostalgia, sort of.
It wasn't entirely 78.
Mm-hmm. About 4 or 5 years later, Cecil, we get this news today of Boston College in Alabama with a home and home for a decade or so away from now. But I guess it's not all that difficult, or it is difficult to think about BC and Alabama and not think about Kerry Good, think about Doug Flutie, and go back to the early 80s, 83-ish or so?
83 and 84. 83 up there, coldest, iciest, rainiest, nastiest Alabama game I can remember, right up there with any of them. Auburn 2000 or any of them. No,
98 Music City Bowl. Oof.
Or what? Yeah, 98 Music City Bowl, 76 Liberty Bowl, which was just cold. It was blowing and sleet, slush, semi-snow up in Boston. How that game in Boston got scheduled for November the 24th or 25th, I'll never remember. So, but it was, and then turned around and played the opener in '84, Alabama versus Doug Flutie again, and Kerry Good just dominating the first half and then getting hurt on the second half kickoff. Never really the same after that.
So we continue to see these home and homes. I think the fans obviously love it in terms of the bucket list aspect of it as well, being able to travel and go to places like South Bend, Columbus, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Madison, Wisconsin. We run down these future opponents, and I wanted to ask you, are you surprised there isn't more of a Pac-12 presence in this with the home and homes?
Travel's hard. There is a series with Arizona.
Right.
But just get out to California, get back, and you don't know, you may have a conference game the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are less likely than ACC, Big 10, Big 12. It's just Alabama Washington would be a great series, but who wants to do that travel as a coach?
Oh, yeah.
Alabama. I've always wanted Alabama Stanford Rose Bowl rematches, but don't know that you can get out to the Bay Area. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Arizona game. It's a long way away, but Friday nighter, just to alleviate some of that.
Give you a few extra days to recover.
Would love to see them. Of course, at that time, Las Vegas will be one of the 32 team playoff host sites, and you could play Oregon State there in the Vegas NFL stadium. Once the playoffs expanded to the top 4 teams in every league.
Oh, geez. Speaking of which, I was going to ask you about the buzz surrounding expansion with the college football playoff. What do you think it needs to be next? Because there is going to be a next, as we know, in terms of number of teams. And what do you think we're actually going to get when they make this inevitable move?
I don't know where and I'm not discrediting the reporter who do a great job, that 12 is suddenly the number. The hypothetical possibility there of having to play 17 games is I'll be perfectly honest with you. 13 was tough enough this year. Now, there were a lot of extenuating circumstances this year, but 13 was tough enough. I can't imagine somebody winning their conference getting one of those first round games. I guess you'd have 4 of those, and then having to play 3 more games, because you've gone from 4 to 8, and playing 17 games. How it would work out, I think, all things being equal, Alabama would be fine with it. They feel like they could pretty consistently be in the playoff as they have been. But to say, well, it'll change up the parity at the top, anything's possible. But I will say this. Football is not basketball. And the Cinderella story, Loyola Chicago or somebody, that might happen in a round of 12 game where you're not playing one of the top 3 or 4. But I'm not a believer. People can argue this. People can say, jump up and down and say, oh, this is what would happen with a undefeated Memphis team or Toledo. I don't think they want a whole lot of LSU or Georgia or Alabama or Clemson or Oklahoma in a playoff scenario. I think you might see an upset. You would see more 48-7 than you would upsets.
Which only reaffirms what we already knew. I mean, it's about the money. If you're going to anything really more than 8 should be enough, shouldn't it, to identify a real champion in college football?
So your 5 conference champs, and then you hash out if you want to reserve one of the 3 remaining spots for group of 5 and hash it out from there. That would work. The other thing, I mean, you would just have to determine, particularly in a 12, even in an 8, what's your purpose of the SEC championship game? All it would have done last year would have put, I think Florida might have still been in, but would have been to put Florida on the bubble, from being definitely in to putting them on the bubble because they'd lost to LSU the week before. Why eliminate yourselves in a conference championship game? Particularly when it's a conference championship level game like that. A lot of years, the SEC championship game has been better than the college football semifinal, including last year. Alabama, Florida, great game. So, what are you going to do with that? What would be what's the purpose of Alabama playing Florida last year when all it did, hypothetically, and certainly in a 4-team, but hypothetically in an 8-team, would be knock out a team that if you just had the 2 divisional champs, Florida would have been safely in. So, and A&M would have been in. So it's that's something that they're going to have to weigh. If you take out the conference championship game, do you go from 8 to 9? Everybody loved 10, but do you go from 8 to 9 conference games? The Nick Saban plan? I don't know. If it goes to 9 conference games at any point in the near future, Alabama's going to be playing basically nothing but a P5 schedule.
And if you do take away the conference championship game, you better have something that can backfill for that, because look at the check ESPN's about to write that. Yeah, ESPN's about to write the big check, right, for that CBS spot in the SEC. So
and SEC is going to be sitting there and saying, well, and hearing, well, we just won't have conference championship games Well, that means one thing to Conference USA or the MAC, and it means an entirely different thing to the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you're packaging that.
Sure you are. Sure. All that's got to be worked out. So I don't know that there's an absolute proposal on the table that the SEC would rubber stamp right now. But my thought is, if you're going to say ultimately, well, we'll do away with these conference championship games, we can't be playing have teams playing 17 games, then the SEC is going to say, fine, but we want our slice of the pie to be bigger.
Yeah.
We want to be compensated for that.
Yeah.
So complicated negotiation.
It's interesting because it doesn't seem as if maybe university presidents have all that much of a problem with extending schedules to potentially 17 games, but fighting tooth and nail against this name, image, and likeness, including today up in front of Congress, where it looks like NCAA President Mark Emmert's taking a pretty good paddling up there, which is essentially his job, right? I mean, this is why he makes what he makes, is to just get flogged in public like he is today.
Right. He's got a big contract for the same reason that Wile E. Coyote had a big contract in the Roadrunner cartoon. He's there to take a beating, get the Acme 10-ton ball dropped on his head.
He's a jobber, Cecil. He's a jobber, pretty much.
Yeah, a little bit, but
jobber heel.
Yeah, he's almost like a Mr. McMahon heel. He's not like a heel that's been beating guys, getting some heat on him. He's just a schlub. He's management.
Yeah.
He's managed. So yeah, he's like Stone Cold versus Mr. McMahon.
Cecil, I know you had some poignant thoughts about this Alabama softball team. I know you've heard a lot of the same things we have, and Alabama fans very passionate about softball over the last decade plus, thanks in large part to Patrick Murphy. And
sure,
we've also heard some second guessing from the fan base, which my takeaway from that, Cecil, is that is as indicative of how relevant Alabama softball is than anything else, because we hear the same type of passion and the same type of quantity of voices, it seems like, with Alabama softball these days as we hear almost with Alabama football.
Yeah, now I agree with that. Now wait until football doesn't win.
Sure.
Wait till they lose the final. And you hear second guessing, third guessing, and fourth guessing about who Saban started and why they did what they did and so forth. But yeah, and I think that's fine. I think there's a value to it. I don't discount anybody's opinion. I'm not, I can't get into the magical thinking, that we know that if Montana Fouts had started that first game on Sunday, she'd no hit Florida State, but because she pitched Monday, they scored 8 runs on her, But how do we know either of those would have been true? How do we know she would have been sharp on Sunday? That the offense would have been any better than it was? We don't know. You can speculate that Sunday Montana, I wrote this, that Sunday Montana would have been great, but Monday Montana was terrible. And, and that's not blaming Montana. They wouldn't have been there without Montana Fouts. Believe me, one of the great pitchers in the game today. So, but yeah, what if Murph starts her and they lose? You just throw her 14 innings, you just put her back out there. I mean, they could lose 1-0. The offense didn't score. And do you just put her back out there? Do you use Lexi then? I mean, a lot went into it. At the time, Murph thought he'd have a second game on Sunday if they didn't win that first one. And the weather changed that. So, and somebody said, well, they knew it midway through the first game, so you're going to go out and pull Lexi and put Montana in when you're behind? I mean, would that have been the strategy? I mean, it's easy to say. As you know, it's easy to say if they had started Montana in the first game, she'd have pitched another perfect game. But nobody knows that, and the facts that we have in front of us are that Florida State had a good scouting report, was able to hit her, and she wasn't at her sharpest. Whether she would have been on Sunday or not, who knows? But that's very, very similar to you can go back to Jalen or Tua or why didn't against Clemson, why didn't Sarkisian run the ball more? Well, in the game that Bo broke his leg, how did Clemson get up plays? Well, part of it, Bo Scarborough broke his leg. So you can, but then why didn't they stick to the run? Every loss has 1,000 reasons, and you can grasp onto one and ride that for as hard as you feel like you want to ride it, So
yeah, and if Florida State finishes off Oklahoma tonight in 2 games, maybe that'll be the answer. That Alabama just simply ran into a damn good team at the wrong time.
Really well coached. I'm really confident. Pitching's good enough, so we'll see what happens. Would be the second time that they've done it. Would be the second time that they've been fairly moderately seeded, I guess I would say, and gone to Oklahoma City and put it all together.
Yeah.
So credit to them.
Well, Cecil, as we let you go,
Oklahoma could hit 9 home runs tonight and tomorrow night.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
Well, as we let you go, Cecil, I'm just going to let you know that I don't like Julio Jones in the AFC South as much as I liked him in your NFC South, just for the record, just so we're clear on that.
Julio against the Saints was always good. It's gonna be fascinating to see Julio and Derek in the same offense. That's never thought I'd see it.
Alabama's had some physically impressive dudes in the Nick Saban era, but those two have got to be top 3 or so, if they're not top 2.
That's 1A and 1B, I think.
Yeah. That's probably right.
That's one. Some of the other guys are different, but if you talk about built for the NFL, they got to be 1A and 1B, and now they're both in Nashville. So
no doubt. Well, Cecil,
it'll be interesting to see now. All the Titans have to do is trade for Tua, and the dream will be complete for Alabama.
Yeah, that would be the capper, no doubt about it. Hey, Cecil, always appreciate the time, man.
Sure, glad to do it.
There you go. Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com. Back to put a wrap on a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports right after this.
All right, we have
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Cloudy at times with scattered to numerous showers and thunderstorms this afternoon and tonight. The high today 86, the low tonight 70. Tomorrow partially sunny, warm and humid. Scattered showers and storms developing again. The high at 87. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 84 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Back to put a wrap on a Wednesday edition of Southern Fried Sports. Thanks, as always, to the incomparable Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com joining us on the program today. Thanks, as always, to Jacob Harrison doing an outstanding job of producing the program. The lunch whistle on this Wednesday, Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. They had their Craft Burger Tuesday yesterday, and the Fiesta Burger looked like it was to die for. And the good news is you can get great burgers every day of the week among several other fantastic items on that Southern Ale House menu. Get by there for lunch right now. Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Until 11 a.m. on Thursday. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody.